So to write polynomials in standard form, we have to make sure the exponents are in order from greatest to least. And you may be asking yourself, well, why does that matter? There's a couple of different reasons. Your highest exponent is the degree of the polynomial, which determines that special name that we use for it. So if that's first, then you can always look and see the first exponent is your degree exponent. So that's one reason to write it in standard form. Another reason is when you get to your higher level math classes, and even some of the stuff we're going to do later this unit, it's just going to make your work a whole lot easier to put it in standard form. And especially in those higher level math classes, it's going to be required anyway. So what we're going to do, number one, so 4x squared is a term. It has an exponent of 2 squared, right? Squared is an exponent of 2. Then plus 5, it does not have a variable, so it does not have a variable exponent, and we're looking strictly at just the variable exponents. So we would say this has no variable exponent. Of course, 5 does have an exponent of 1, but we're looking at the variable exponents. I just want to make that really, really clear before we move on. And then we've got minus 2x. All of the signs in front of the number go with it. So that minus means that 2 is negative, which may be important later. So we want to make sure we keep that negative with that 2x. It does have an implied exponent of 1. If it helps you to go ahead and write that 1, please do so. I'm not going to, but I'm perfectly fine if that helps you. So let's put them in order from greatest to least. Well, exponent of 2, no variable exponent, exponent of 1. So right now it's 2, 0, 1. Well, 2 is the highest one I have, so we're going to keep it first. Okay? But then a variable exponent of 1 is bigger than no variable exponent at all. So we're going to take that negative 2x, making sure we keep the negative with the 2, and we're going to write it next. Okay, so we just move that negative 2x to after the 4x squared. And then our plus 5 is going to go at the end. And that is that polynomial written in standard form. Number 2, this 3x has a implied variable exponent of 1. Again, if it helps you, please write it. And then we've got no variable exponent here. Well, variable exponent of 1, no variable exponent. This one's already in standard form. And that's one thing you'll notice. Sometimes they're fine just the way they're written, so there's nothing we need to do to that one. It's good. Now, I do want you to notice we're starting to see a pattern formed that constant term, that number with no variable, is always at the end, which makes sense because it would always go after all of those variable exponents. So I want you to start noticing things like that. For number 3, this is the most missed problem, so I'm going to do it incorrectly first, because this is the most common mistake. So we've got 3x, so that would be an implied exponent of 1. Then we've got our 5x squared, so an exponent of 2 is higher than an implied exponent of 1. So I just flip those around. So take a second and look at that and think about why it's wrong. This is the most common mistake. So in this top one, sorry about that. So in the top one, the 3 is positive, right? There's no minus sign in front of it. And the 5 is negative. There's the negative sign. But down here, my answer, all of a sudden, the 5 is positive and the 3 is negative. The most common mistake is just to flip those around but not move the negative sign. So to fix this, I guess I shouldn't have erased all of it. That negative has to stay with the 5, and that 3 didn't have a sign in front of it, so if it moves behind something, we have to signify that 3 was positive. So that's one thing you have to be careful about is the signs. Okay. So now it's in standard form, highest exponent of 2, next highest exponent of 1. All right, number 4. So we have a constant with no variable exponent, and then we have the implied exponent of 1. So this one, again, just needs flip-flops, so we're going to be careful with our signs. So we're going to bring that positive 5y to the front, and once it's in the front, the positive is implied, so you don't need the plus sign anymore. Then we're going to bring that negative 2 here. Negative becomes subtraction, but it stays with the 2. So variable exponent of 1, no variable exponent at all. Very, very similar to number 2. It just wasn't in the correct order. So number 6, we're starting to get a little bit longer now. So 4y has the implied exponent of 1. The 5 does not have a variable exponent at all. And then we have the negative 6y to the third. So that's definitely higher than the implied 1 and the no variable exponent. So I'm going to take that negative 6y to the third, making sure that negative goes wherever that 6 goes. Then we'll put the implied exponent of 1 next. That 4 was positive, so now that plus sign is going to be necessary. And then the constant, the number with no variable, is always going to go last because it has no variable exponent. So there is that one written in standard form. All right, last but certainly not least, we've got exponent of 2, no variable exponent, implied exponent of 1, and then an exponent of 3. So 2, none, 1, and 3. So 3 is definitely the highest, so that y to the third is going to come to the front. The plus sign is no longer needed because it's implied now. Then the next one is this 2 here, so positive 4y squared, showing that that 4 was positive. Then the implied 1, so the plus 3y to the implied 1 exponent. And then always at the very end, if you have it, the constant, the number with no exponent. So we had 4 terms to start with. One thing as they get bigger, just make sure you don't leave out any terms. So we had 4 terms at the beginning. We have 4 terms, exponents of 3, 2, implied 1, and no variable exponent, which is definitely in standard form.